Welcome back to another episode of Transitions from War. I'm your host, Mike Ergo, a Marine Corps veteran. I've returned from Iraq and faced the challenges of PTSD, addiction, and grief to create a new life that is balanced and healthy in mind, body, and spirit. I'm joined by fellow Marine Rich Stralian, and together we talk about our journey to mental and physical health through endurance sports. Each episode will share some of our journey or interview inspired veterans and subject matter experts to help us find that purpose and connection we all crave. If you have any questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email me at mike@transitionsfromwar.com. And if you enjoy the show, consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your audio. As always, thanks for listening, everyone, and let's get to the show. Yeah, man. So we wanted to talk about that whole war in the Ukraine thing going on. We talked about it a little bit offline, basically, because I mean, we're probably in a unique position in that, well, you live in a former Soviet state currently.
Yes.
You have a spouse who's part of who was raised and born in a former Soviet state. That is, how would you say, someone involved? Union. Yeah, she's born in the Soviet Union. That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, she was the opposite of Turkey when we went into Iraq, basically.
Yeah.
Or that's what Belarus did this time.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, Russia, go ahead, man.
Yeah, we'll be your doormat.
Here, dude. Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Lukashenko didn't have a choice, but sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. Exactly. Well, I mean, there's probably been a lot of hot takes on the whole war. But I think, like, for us, it's interesting because, you know, definitely given, you know, our different MOSs in the Marine Corps, and, you know, just our whole vet experience. But man, I wonder if some of the FOMO is starting to wear off with a lot of vets. At first, man, I was part of that FOMO. I was like, I want to be over there slaying bodies.
Yeah.
But I think a little bit of that is worn off, as we've seen, just like, yeah, now it's like set in for the long haul. The honeymoon phase of this war is over.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think part of that has to do with the way that the army of the Russian Federation has kind of been perceived. Like, we still kind of remember it from the Soviet Union days.
Yeah.
Where it was, you know, like the second best army or something, right?
Yeah,
like,
and people parading through, you know, Red Square and everything.
Yeah. And so when they went into Ukraine, like, it was, I would say, fairly palpable fear out here, like in Estonia, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, the wanting to go fight was like, because you thought Kyiv was going to fall in like 3-4 days, you know?
Yeah.
And when it didn't, or Kyiv, or I don't even know the right way to say it. I know the right transliteration, which is the Ukrainian transliteration, not the Russian one. Kyiv. But yeah, dude, I spent my whole time in the Marine Corps. Like, I was originally a Russian linguist. And I never used it the whole time I was in the Marine Corps. I was a signals intel analyst when I deployed to Iraq. And then I studied it at Cal, but that was kind of to help my GPA out and get a little bit better at Russian. Like, that was it. You know, the thing is, I think part of it, though, the reason that I was wanting to engage that way is just because I think we've all, like, even if you're just a casual, like, I bet you know about without having read the histories, like, just from your time in the Marine Corps, talking about, especially there was at the beginning of, you know, 9/11, like when we were around early 2000s, so much was focused on terrorism. And there's that story of when, I think it was an opera house in, like, it was right before Putin got elected. It was in the mid 90s. And some Chechens, Chechen terrorists or partisans, insurgents took over like an opera house.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they just killed everybody. Like, the Russians just killed everybody.
Yeah.
And that's like something that we kind of grew up with in a way, like we knew how the American military fights and how the Russian military fights,
Yeah.
and there's a long historical context to that. But like, I think the first or second day after the war started, I started that other podcast and I was like, look, there's going to be a ton of civilians dead.
We're going to link to that, by the way, in the show notes. So if you want to check out what Rich is doing, it's pretty awesome.
It's just kind of random at this point, but thanks. but yeah, I mean, like I knew that they were just going to come out and use just shit out of World War II, really, like total war tactics.
Yeah.
It's just how they operate. Like when you were reading that history recently of the Russians specifically,
Yeah.
did anything strike you about the mindset?
Well, I have a hard time putting into words, but the Russians, just like they're a hard breed of people, and the mindset is a lot different than any of us growing up recently would really know about.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best way to put it. Like, and it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Like part of it is that they didn't get rid of slavery.
Yeah.
Or they called it serfdom until like 1853 or some shit. And that was all of anybody who was not a noble was tied to the land with less rights than like a serf. Or what was it called in the agrarian, like in England? Was that still serfdom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had like serfdom until like 1853, something like that. Maybe it was 1862, but mid 1800s.
Yeah.
No literary language until that point. Like Pushkin was the first person who wrote down anything that was like, he basically made a combination between what the church said and the way the peasants spoke. And that's how they made their literary language. But they didn't have it until the 1800s.
Yeah. It's yeah.
It's freaking, I mean,
it's hard to wrap your hand around. I mean, there was no, I mean, so like Western Europe had the Enlightenment going on. Mm-hmm. They were just slaying bodies.
Yeah. And they were writing all kinds of stuff like, it's just so wild to think, man. And they had, Tsardom.
Yeah.
Right up until 1917, which like, yeah, they had kings and stuff in England, but they had like the nobles had taken some of that power away, from the English, at least.
Yeah.
By 1600s. None of that shit in Russia. It was still like an absolute monarchy. And then they got replaced by Soviets. Well, interim government and then the Soviets.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that whole Soviet mindset is that you wonder how much of an accurate assessment that Putin is actually getting, because everybody has no choice basically but to get slaughtered or to lie and saying something in favor of what he wants to hear.
Yeah, dude. There was at the beginning of this war, there was like a FSB analyst, and they had been, given the task of analyzing like what would happen if we went into Ukraine, blah, 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 blah.
For context, that's like their CIA.
FSB, yeah, it's
Secret Service.
The follow-on to the KGB,
yeah,
which was the Komitet Государственной Безопасности, which is the Committee for State Security. And now it's like the Federальная служба безопасности, I believe, which is like the Federal Service of Security.
Mm.
And that's not technically the people that they send to spy on us, by the way, in the States. That's a different service. But so this guy wrote like a rant, and it's been kind of verified that it was at least from a reputable source, even though it was like put out all over social media. But he was talking about how, like, because of the way the system operates, and it's very much like you're talking about, it's the same mentality that bred, like with prisoners, two of you guys take one rifle, you take two magazines. When the first one dies, the second one picks up the rifle. And continues charging ahead. Yeah. And if not, then your officers are behind you with a heavy machine gun, and they will kill you.
Yeah.
So like that mentality in its modern day form is a bunch of people who are afraid to give this the truth, you know?
Yeah.
So like if you're looking at that Jim Collins book, like Good to Great, there's like two things required for good leadership, and it's the ability to set a vision and to have an accurate and like understanding of the present. Like they lack that understanding.
Yeah.
So they got this request, what would happen if we went into Ukraine? And basically what happened is they all bullshitted it. They were like, if you give them mathematics or you say the people of Ukraine will tell us, no, get the fuck out of here, then they'll pull you into an interrogation room and they'll be like, how can you say that this is bad? Like, why would Mother Russia? Why are you trying to be against Mother Russia?
Yeah.
You know? And then like they got the information they wanted. They acted on that information, you know?
Right.
And it fucked them up. They've lost like the estimates, what the Ukrainians give is much higher, and then the Russians are just straight up lying about their troop numbers. But it's like three or four times what we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan as U.S. troops, anyway.
Total.
Yeah. Like you're talking a few months, and then like twice what the Soviet Union lost in Afghanistan for like the entire duration.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane to put
nuts.
like the metrics of time like that.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. Like there's my first thought was like, hey man, I'm like seriously 4-hour flight away. I was there like a month earlier. Like, and I told my wife that, and she's like, you forfeited your chance to go do that when you had a kid. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. What if you did Zoom interrogations? Oh, sorry, I'm muted. You muted? I'm muted. You hear me now?
You muted? You have to lean them back further. Drop the water that way. No. Dude, it's just like the shit that's going on is brutal. And I feel bad because like the guys who got out there, from some of the stuff that I've heard, at least like the Gravy SEALs types.
Yeah.
And not even like vets, but people who just like, there was like a week or two into the war, the Russians like blew up a base that was near, like between Lviv and Poland.
Yeah, right.
And it was where like the Foreign Legion was, like where the people who were coming to volunteer to like help.
Yeah.
And a couple of those guys tried to go, and the rumor was that they were being tracked down and brought back because they signed 3-year contracts.
Wow.
Which, no, I mean, there was one dude I read about who was a former Force Recon guy and just went and like brought some stuff, like kit, like just tried to get as much things as they could, and then brought them to like a village where there was like a Ukrainian colonel or something. And then he was like, hey, look, I can train your militia guys. They trained them in like basic patrolling and this type of stuff. A little bit of, I don't know if they even really did shooting. I think they more did like patrolling, camouflage, like light discipline, that kind of stuff. But it's a really scary war in a way that I don't think ours, not that, well, you had a different war, but like we got launched like the 120 Mike anti-personnel rockets at us.
Yeah.
I think you were in a place where you were getting shot at and probably launched like artillery and this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And some anti-personnel. But these guys are getting like cruiser missile, like hundreds of miles away with pretty good accuracy.
Yeah. Death from the sky, just raining down.
And you can't respond to that. Like, it doesn't matter how well you can shoot a fucking M16.
Yeah. There's no contact left. It's just boom, dead.
Boom. Yeah. I don't know, man. And for a while I was thinking like, hey, like it doesn't really help to like go kill some fucking conscript from their
That's the thing.
Country.
After I saw who was fighting, my qualms weren't really with them. It was more with, the government, really, with Putin.
And
because I mean, half of those kids didn't even know. I'll say kids, but half of them didn't really even know they had invaded Ukraine. They just thought
they thought they were like, exactly.
I mean, how fucked up is that? Like, we knew that we were going in, there was a lot of preparation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the one thing that did kind of, where I kind of stopped feeling sorry for them was the like some of the war crimes that have been done.
Bucha, yeah.
Just yeah, Bucha, especially like where I read some of the coverage there, and I was like, yeah, that makes me want to fucking drop
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But you know, um, you got a whole state. Like when I say state, I don't mean like Minnesota, Iowa, but I mean like the administrative
Sovereign state.
functions.
Yeah.
Yes, a sovereign state that are all prisoner to one man and his whims.
Yeah.
And it was the same under Stalin.
Yeah.
Stalin was way worse. I hate to say like, but he was way fucking worse.
Oh, what?
Like
Tens, 100 million, something like that? Like killed?
yeah, like it was at least 35 million. He killed all of the people who were at all even like anyone who had fought in World War One or was a hero of like the Civil War,
Yeah.
even if they were on the Soviet side, he killed them all because they were a potential threat. He had Trotsky killed in, I think that was by that time Mexico. And Trotsky just wanted to like drink and chase skirts in Mexico. He wasn't
Yeah.
coming back. But and then there's this like little known thing where he actually committed genocide against Ukraine. Stalin did back in the 30s with the bread famines, like deliberately the collectivization just took all their food and it just millions starved.
Yeah, that's insane to think about, millions of people starving.
It is.
Yeah.
It's stuff that I feel like I do feel like in a sense, and you probably feel this as well because you've been out like hunting and stuff recently.
Yeah.
But like, there's this story of this like two Danish girls who went to like Panama or something and hiked the wrong direction and were never heard of it. Well, they found their bodies or parts of their bodies. There was definitely some foul play there, but like it underlines the point to me that like, look, man, you're a bad fall and a loss of cell phone reception away from being in like 1700 or for that matter,
Yeah.
even further back, like caveman times, like wilderness versus human.
Yeah.
If you're a farmer and someone that comes in at gunpoint takes all your fucking food, we're not as, I mean, we're yes, we have this like veneer of a nice civilization,
Yep.
but we're just this far away, I think sometimes.
Oh, I mean,
from
you see it. Like, I mean, we saw it all over the country. We saw it a lot of places over the last year, civil unrest, how just close it is to buildings getting burned down and people just going to mob violence and mob mentality. But yeah, the other thing is just the scale of this is hard to wrap your head around. Whereas, what we did in Iraq, we definitely, there was, like a conventional war for not that long, right?
Right.
The invasion. And then it was all unconventional stuff. But this is conventional on both sides. This is modern warfare on both sides, not one side fighting guerrillas.
Yeah, that's true. Like they have enough of our weapons, that like the Iraqi like insurgents, they had old outdated shit that was left in weapons caches when the Iraqi army fell, right? And Iran pushed them in. But like, yeah, this is, the Ukrainians are coming to fight with some new stuff,
Yeah.
There's also some of the older stuff, but that's just because they're trained on it. So they're trying to send that stuff in to get used up, like where countries from NATO, like Romania and stuff, who have that shit because they're part of that. They're sending those, but they get javelins. That's us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I don't know, man. Here's what go ahead.
No, I'm just saying the fighting style is as opposed to what we experience, where, I mean, some of the heaviest urban combat, the heaviest urban combat up to that date, 2004 Fallujah, since, Vietnam. My unit lost 21 people. Well, less than that, 18 people in that month. Thankfully, only that many. But we're looking at a type of warfare where entire companies die in a day.
That's true.
Battalions get wiped out. That's the
Yeah.
kind of fighting we're looking at with Ukraine, Russia. So
So when you guys were going through Fallujah, you were fighting, we called them the insurgents, but it was multiple different groups, right?
Yeah. And I didn't understand it at the time. I'm just starting to piece it up. Some of it was like reaction against, I won't say which unit it was, but it wasn't the Marine Corps unit that killed a bunch of civilians in the invasion. So there was the Iraqi resistance to that, never wanting to see that happening again in their city. And then there was the people from all over the place, including Chechnya, fighting against, the Americans, because it was like the place of jihad. So a lot of different groups.
And this is, I mean, nominally, you have two sides, but then you have like these two, especially now that things have moved east, you have this like a independent Republic of Donbass and the independent Republic of, I think it's Luhansk.
Okay.
What is it? Luhansk, right?
Okay.
Lugansk. And I think in Russian it's Lugansk, and in like Ukrainian it's Luhansk. Like they do this from the gut. But so those are nominally their own forces. They're separate. They were separatist. They're not like regular Russian army, but they're armed by the Russians, supported by the Russians. And then you have Ukraine, and you have some foreign people there fighting. I'm not sure how much they're like getting into it or what, but
dude, there was the insane part of this too. There's so many different like factions. Like I was watching a little documentary that predates this war, talking about the euphemism far right, aka like white nationalists and like white power people fighting in Ukraine because they're like, oh, we can get some trigger time here, and they're going to fight in Ukraine to do that and come back and like
get some practice.
Exactly.
We're battle hardened now.
Yeah,
you didn't know?
We're more effective white power people now.
There is an article that I came across a while ago. I'll try and find it and send it to you. And it's about it, like it was shared on LinkedIn by Scott Stalker, the Master Gunnery Sergeant in charge of Space Force, like the senior enlisted guy. And he was like, yeah, I served with this colonel. He was one of the best that I ever knew. And here he's working as a war reporter. So he has like some article about the people who are going there to fight as a part of that Foreign Legion. But I don't know, man. It's such a tragedy that, I mean, first of all, it's an extremely complex situation. Like, I mean, we talked a little bit about the Russian mentality,
Yeah.
But you could write fucking books on it. And I'm dealing with that as like, we have what we call intercultural communication time in my family.
Yeah.
My wife was talking. We were talking about the American way of being like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like whenever you're going somewhere, like, you kind of talk to people, especially Minnesotans. And if you're from, I find like the bigger the population of the city you're in, the less likely people are to talk.
Right.
But, my brother and I were talking, and he was like, yeah, I lived in San Diego, and like, no one ever wanted to talk to me. Like, even when I worked in the coffee house, blah, 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 blah. And then like, my wife, I was like, yeah, like, hey, bro, yeah, like they don't do that out here, and then Elena like looked at the FaceTime or whatever, and she's like, yes, like you can't just talk to everyone about the fucking weather all the time. That's stupid. It's just like boom, like a knife. And it's definitely like they're more straightforward, more blunt.
One might call it the Soviet charm.
Exactly. Like, no, this is stupid. But at least you know where you stand with them.
It's much more
It's clear.
honest. I mean,
Yeah.
as opposed to, I mean, I call it like, I don't know, that California fake friendliness.
Yes.
Let's
California,
totally
you
hang
know, like,
out.
yeah,
Let's get,
let's get coffee. Let's get lunch sometime. Like,
you're never gonna do that.
no, no.
Yeah.
Or when you do, it's like that uncomfortable pause, and they're like, actually, I'm busy. Like,
Okay. So we
sorry,
we
can't do it.
pretended we
Like,
tried and then we got out of it.
yeah, it was like a mutual, oh, I don't know. I hate that shit. But um, yeah, so it's just, I don't know, dude. It's I watched some documentary recently. It was by some French guy. Written, it was done in like 2018, 2019 about Putin. And it was funny because the way that they put that together, the documentary, sometimes it seemed like the documentary maker was kind of speaking for Putin. Some of it was accurate, but
Yeah.
like, I guess the thing to understand is like, I like to think at least that a lot of American thinkers do not see the world as like a zero sum game where if someone wins, the other person has to lose, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. You think you can build something, and just the Russian mentality, especially the way that Putin thinks, is like it's straight up zero sum, man. Like he thinks, every bit that NATO gets closer to Russia is a provocation. Like they're really pissed that the Baltics joined,
Yeah.
NATO, and yeah, he's just. But at the same time, I mean, I get it because there was a back of the envelope or handshake agreement that said like that basically when the Soviet Union fell apart, the U.S. like ambassador or whatever said that we wouldn't expand east,
Right.
or
But
NATO wouldn't expand east. It's not the U.S., but that's not provocation for the war. That's a
well,
different.
my
That's
take
an
on that
important.
was my uneducated take on that was um I think a lot of these sovereign states looked at it like, yeah, we know what that's like. We don't want that ever again.
You're right, man.
I mean,
Estonia has a population of like 20% or at least 20%. The official numbers around 20% of people who speak Russian because they got forcibly moved here as like a method of keeping those states closer.
yeah,
Here's
yeah.
another.
I mean, that happened
Did
everywhere in all the stans.
exactly in every like little Sovietsky site. I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. Like the Moldavia, which no longer it's Moldova now.
Yeah. Well,
But
Turkmenistan, like all of it, everywhere.
yeah, I guess in Kyrgyzstan, I've heard that the Russian population there kind of like went a little native. I guess they like adopted some of the um I don't know, like Asian traditions, because they're like Central Asian.
Mm-hmm.
So like my buddy's from Kyrgyzstan, and he's like, bro, he's like, I hate these Russian immigrants, man. They're fucking assholes. And I was like, dude, like calm down. And he's like, no, like here, like you ever ask a Russian like how they're doing in whatever Soviet state you're in, they'll always bitch and complain. But then you say, well, why don't you go back to Russia? And they're like, nah, this is better. And then he was like, at least ours in Kyrgyzstan are like nicer, And I
Yeah.
was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, they've been there so long that they've kind of adopted some of the Kyrgyz traditions, like just kind of being a little bit more humble, whatever,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
here, if you see someone, Estonians are very quiet, they don't like to talk. If you see someone running down the street screaming here, they're Russian or they're American, or sorry, Russian speaking Estonian or American,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
or teenager.
the thing about this war puts in perspective too. It was interesting how much like the um American apologists and like, or the American like apology for American crowd, like, oh, I'm sorry, everything about America is bad. That whole crowd fucking flipped around when they're like, oh, you mean it's worse if Russia tries to impose their will on the globe? Oh, oh yeah, maybe we want America back in the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I haven't exactly seen anybody beating down the door to emigrate to Russia.
That's true. Edward Snowden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he kind of got trapped there actually,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
he got stuck. Uh, yeah, I will say that for a while I was kind of like, I was real pissed about Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
But then like I had it kind of set to me by someone outside, like because they really tend to like America out here, and of course, we have like people who come through that kind of stuff. But in both Ukraine when I was there and here, they like Americans a lot, and I was like, well, like why? and and it was like some teacher from out here that was like, look, man, like the way that America put together the post-war like post World War II order. Like America kind of led the
Yeah. Marshall Plan and all that.
like yeah, and the Bretton Woods institutions and rebuilding Germany and Japan. They're like that is in the entirety, and certainly it helped us. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
in the entirety of the history of international like relations, I guess that is the first action that was not purely in self-interest. And that was told to me
Yeah.
by a non-American. And I was, when I thought about it like that, and it was posed to me by someone else, I was like, hey, I'm pretty proud of that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
we're not all bad. Now, of course, we've done some shit. Everyone does some
But you
shit.
put in the context, you're like, yeah, when things are this, I don't want to stomp on anybody's, legitimate gripes about shit that we've done wrong in this country.
Right.
But you look at the context of that on a larger scale compared to what we're seeing now of
Mm-hmm.
like someone who glorifies Stalin and thinks he can do better and wants to like remake his own Soviet Union, but the better version of it, like more brutal. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Enforce people. Like, he thinks that the fall of the Soviet Union was one of the single greatest historical like problems in the history of the world. Like,
Yeah. If you want to talk about alternative facts, Jesus
right.
Christ.
Yeah. And it's like, man, I just think that there's, right now you kind of have China and Russia, and they have their vision for what they want the world to look like
Yeah.
based on their own histories and how they've done all that. And then you have the US way. And I'm not saying we live up to our values, because I think there's quite a bit of times, including right now, that we don't live
Yeah.
up to our
I'd
values.
say Smedley Butler had some legitimate gripes
He did.
when he wrote the whole war is a racket thing about the Banana Republic wars and all that shit.
Hell yeah. Yeah. But I do think that, like, you know, America has managed to clean itself up before, and things have gotten better for people who are marginalized populations over time. And things can be bad and getting better at the same time,
Exactly.
And I think that that is something that, it takes continual. Those are like all these different power fluxes and different interest groups and blah, 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 blah. Go fucking read Fukuyama if you want to know about it. But what you get if you get Russia, or if you get China, you get Putin, and you get what is his name? Ping.
Xi.
Like Xi Jinping, right?
Yeah.
That's what you get. And you get histories that are written by your president, who has no term limit, and you get what you get, and you're appreciative of that.
Dude,
or you go to jail or
saw
disappear.
just a little taste of that when I was in Hong Kong a couple of years ago, when that whole it was about 6 months in, but it ramped up, the whole like sovereignty protest in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, the Chinese, like mainland China, police that came in, beating the shit out of people. Like, it was serious. Like, me and my Marine Corps buddy Sean Cruz, we had 50 yard line seats to that. but we literally had to get out of the way in between the police rushing to the Hong Kong protesters who were lighting off like battery
Jesus.
bombs and stuff.
Dude,
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that people will still fight for democracy or the right to participate and have a say
Yeah.
against all odds. I mean, even Russia, since like the war started, I think 15,000 people were arrested and thrown in prison for protesting. You know,
Yeah.
oh fuck. And I mean, yeah, we do beat up the Black Lives Matter protesters. But not the same way they did. Like, it's a different level of like, look at what fucking Belarus did when Lukashenko lost that election.
Yeah.
And
Fill,
said he
fill
won.
our listeners in for that who haven't
I mean,
seen
all right, so
or heard.
this is a tough one. I guess I'll sum it up. So basically, there was an election. Now, throughout the history of Belarus, Lukashenko came into power in like the mid 90s. Anyone who was a potential threat at that point in time either left or miraculously was never heard of again.
Right.
So they disappeared people like in the 90s.
They
And
committed suicide by shooting themselves in the back of the head.
Exactly. Yeah. With their hands bound behind their back.
Exactly.
And then they buried themselves in a shallow grave. Sorry, that's not funny. I should be.
Yeah.
Sure, my wife's in the other room, like, fuck you.
It's funny how ridiculous and fucking crazy it is.
Yeah. But so between that time and 2019, there was always like some opposition candidate, but it was usually like kind of a straw man. Like the state would kind of fund them, and they would always be a little bit too ridiculous, or they would spread the potential vote far out enough that basically there was no shot for anybody. And in 2019, two guys, or actually, I think there were three potential candidates, but they all got thrown in jail. And one of the guys was a blogger, and he just was a fucking blogger, man. Like, he just gave kind of news, and they threw him in jail because he had filed his running papers. They took the guy who was the head of I want to say it's Rosneft Bank in Belarus. So it was part of that like Russian oil, whatever, but they had a bank and they had a Belarusian branch. And the head of that guy like decided he was going to go. And then there was an IT guy, and Lukashenko threw him all in jail. And then for some reason, like a bunch of people said, hey, why don't we vote for this blogger's wife? She was out of jail. Like, they had thrown other family members of these people in jail as well. And everyone just says, yeah, we'll vote for the blogger's wife. And they were like, it's a fucking woman, ain't gonna do shit. What do you think? And that was Lukashenko and his homies. That's what they were saying.
Right.
And she just said, look, I'll give you a real election. That's the only thing she promised. She just said, you elect me and we'll get a real election. And widespread actual fraud, because like in Belarus, it doesn't matter how you vote, it matters how they're counted.
Yeah.
And Lukashenko declared himself the winner, but no one else recognized it. The only people who stood with Lukashenko were like Russia and I want to say like Kazakhstan and Georgia and all these other like former Soviet republics who also have like their own dictators.
Yeah.
And then there started these protests. And when the protests happened, basically you could get arrested for fucking looking at people the wrong way. Some of the ingenuity of these Belarusian protesters, because Belarusians aren't Ukrainians. They don't like go protest all the time. Like the Ukrainians they overthrew like major protests in their country for 2004.
Yeah.
They had the Orange Revolution, I think 9 and then 14, like there were a bunch of these. Belarus never really did that. And this time people organized these mass protests. The police there are well funded and they're pseudo military. So it's like police and military are just a lump, and you call them militia. Yeah. And they were throwing people in jail. Some people disappeared. When like it at the early stages, they were raping people with police batons,
Ugh.
like men and women, like shoving them,
Yeah.
people disappeared, man. It was not cool. There's a Belarusian flag that is the Soviet flag. And then there's one that was Belarus between like 1917 and until they got captured by the Soviet Union, which I think was in the 30s when Molotov, Ribbentrop, whatever happened. They had this red and white flag. It got so bad, and it's still so bad now, that you will get arrested for wearing the white and red, but you'll also get arrested for white and orange. And there was like one footballer who, like, I guess somehow a team in Belarus got good at soccer. There's one team that's not supported by the state, and they got good. And some dude said something on the team.
Yeah.
And he fucking got arrested and thrown in jail. And then at the next game, anyone wearing his number got arrested. Like, this is the kind of shit.
This is like,
and what they'll do is they'll fine you like a year's salary, basically, and then just hound you and harass you. Like, at this point, they're not disappearing any people, but
just making life miserable.
Yeah, Putin backed up Lukashenko. And so some of the speculation is that the reason that Belarus had to allow Russian troops to like attack from there is basically because, like, someday a man will knock at your door and he'll ask for
day
a
will
favor.
never come.
Exactly.
And
that's
he owed him. Yeah. You know what?
Yeah,
I think Jordan Peterson made it pretty fashionable to read, Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, but that is a good book to read. It's massive. I won't claim to have read the whole thing, but even to read the first 3 chapters of how people get arrested, it's insane. It just, if you were to make a movie with that as the plot, people would be like, too outlandish. People can never believe that.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I haven't read that book, but now I want to. I think it was something I dodged in my Russian literature classes.
Yeah. The side note, though, have you seen the movie The Death of Stalin comedy?
No.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's got, I forget his name, the guy who plays Michael Bluth in Arrested Development, the senior, and it's got oh God, who's Donnie in Big Lebowski?
Oh, is that the ugly guy, Steve Buscemi?
Buscemi, yes, he is fucking brilliant in it. Yeah.
Death of Stalin. I'll write that down. Man.
Sorry, Steve Buscemi. We know you're a listener to the show. We don't think you're ugly.
Dude, there's like a couple guys in Hollywood who get either casted. It's not a couple. Everyone gets typecasted based on their look, usually, right? And if you're like a super handsome person, man or woman or whatever, they'll like allow you at sometimes to like, I'm going to, like, if you're what's his name, Daniel Day-Lewis or whatever, and you're like a method actor, then you get to try all these different things where you're all these different people. But like, I find it always interesting, like this group of guys who get casted because they're ugly.
Yeah.
And Buscemi's that guy. Fuck.
I'm gonna look it up right now. There's the ugly guy from Boogie Nights.
Tell me there's one dude who's the ugly guy who was all right, Ron Howard, Richie from Happy Days,
Louis Guzman,
director of a bunch of stuff. Have you Louis
Guzman? I'll send you. I'll show you a picture of him. But
look up that dude's brother. Look up Richie from Happy Days' brother, like in real life. Ron Howard's brother.
Let me show you a picture of Louis Guzman first, though. This is, exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I think he's from Dusk Till Dawn as well. But
I remember him from Ghost. He was like, and then there's that other dude from Ghost, like the one, you can't That's all I remember. I don't even know what he said. Ron Howard's brother.
Who's the guy?
Clint Howard. Look up Clint Howard. We're gonna have to in the show notes have like in our list of ugly actors for the day.
Holy shit, dude. He is fucked up looking.
He's fucking ugly. But I mean, he's like probably got more money than like either of us will ever make together in our whole lives.
So. I'm laughing about Boogie Nights too, but who he ended up being a famous actor who died of a heroin overdose, who was oh god, Truman Capote in the movie there.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes, he was one of those guys at first, but then he transitioned into like an actual
super artsy
guy,
right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because he played Truman Capote.
There exactly. But before that, he was fucking Scotty from Boogie Nights. He tries to make out with Dirk Diggler. He's like, "Man, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm such a fucking idiot."
I do remember that.
Oh, I needed that after
brutally, just fuck. John C. Reilly's pretty ugly too.
Yeah, you know, and he continued that with Step Brothers. Yeah, I managed a baseball team. Oh, really? Little League? No, fantasy. Shit, man. If we can't laugh after talking about some of the horrible shit about Ukraine, it's a fucking depressing world.
It's true.
You need some dick and fart jokes in there.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
I think I don't want to get too into the whole like trigger warning and like babying our audience, but I think what I'm going to do after this episode is if you look directly to the next episode, I'm going to put a meditation on there so people can kind of relax themselves and discharge some of this, I don't know, craziness.
I mean, we talked about energy, some of the darkest times in the history of the world, really. I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah. We transition with ugly guy and dick and fart jokes, and then give a meditation. That is the beauty of this podcast. Part information, part fucking stupid jokes, and a little meditation.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. That sounds good, man. I have to do work after this.
Oh, good, man.
The work of a PhD student is never done.
Can you take us out with our whole drink water, meditate, kill bodies, but in Russian?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. I got to get hold on.
If you make it up, no one will know.
Problem was, the
big Russian people will be like, oh, he's a phony. We knew it.
Meditate. Not subjective.
We'll get you next episode.
Hold on, I got this.
You got this?
Yeah. All right. Выпей воду, размышляй и убивай тела.
Right on, man. All right, everyone, that'll do it for this week of Transitions from War. Go ahead and subscribe to the show, follow it. Find us on Facebook, Instagram. You can email me, mike@transitionsfromwar.com with any questions or ideas for the show. And please send the show to people you know who might need to listen to it. Leave us a rating and review on iTunes if you get a chance. And just thanks for listening. All right, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye. Because I mean, if we really wanted to research something and go for it, there's a lot of podcasts that do that. But
That's true. But you want to hear people talk shit.
You want to talk some shit, dude. Did you ever see that Moshe Kesher? No, was it Moshe? No, it was Brent Weinberg. He has this like gangster hotline. It's just a bunch of like just dudes. They're like, you want to talk some shit? It's like a 800 or 900 call line where you just call up a gangster and they talk shit to you.
That's
I'll send it to you, dude.
All right. Oh man, I haven't heard those names. Those are like so Bay Area specific comedians. At least that's how I knew of them.
Brent Weinberg and Moshe Kesher. Yep.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I made a drunken ass out of myself in front of Brent. Weinbach, right? Is it Weinbach or Weinberg? Yeah.
Weinbach.
Yeah, he doesn't drink, and I made it was in a rough time in my life, and I was like performing on the same show as him, and like just made an ass out of myself. But he was nice about it. Very nice guy.
Watch a social work spin right here in action, my friend. You helped him stay to his commitment of non-drinking. Boom.
You taught him how to not behave. Congratulations.
Because of you, Rich, he said, I swear to God, I'm never going to drink. I've given people that, I'm sure, many times.
Comedy Store, circa 2011.
Down in LA?
Yeah.
The Comedy Store. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was interesting to perform there.
Yeah, I bet.
It was cool. There was like a little glass piano and you could see all like the little razor scratches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the green room. And then like I got a drink I shouldn't have gone down there. I knew like the guy who was producing the show was not a reputable dude.
Yeah.
And it was right after the heart surgery of my then spouse. And so I had like a drink just to kind of, because I was feeling like the LA-ness of it. And I felt, ugh. So I was like, I'll go have a drink. And then like, stage time is, I don't know, man. It's like one of these things where it's almost like a producer is like, they are a member of the oldest profession. So they just keep bumping. Like anyone who was there who had like had friends who were going to go, like who were paid basically to be on the show like I did, they just kept getting bumped for all of these like cool LA people. Mm-hmm. So like every Bay Area comedian who was in LA kept going, and the dude would just slide them in. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, Dryling, you're going like, 15 now or something. And I'm like, what the fuck? So my one like drink to just like kind of steal my nerves, which I needed still at that time. I ended up having like 10 of them because it just I was like, well, fuck this, man. And then I went up there and it was just such a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, it's like what not to do. Like I began to notice that whenever I failed, like bombed real hard in stand-up comedy, and this goes for life in general, but whenever you really fuck up, you ask like, what was my mentality going into that? And I had decided that like all fucking LA comics are douchebags and that people in LA are materialistic and shitty. And so I went up there and I used like my dumbest like material that I would use at a fucking casino in Alabama or something. You know what I mean? Like I just used the dumbest shit that like assumed the lowest common denominator of my audience. And I didn't do too well. By that time, of course, everyone had already left. Like we got essentially like the doorman get, like the Comedy Store doorman get, where they go on at like 2 a.m. to like, one fucking guy in the audience or something. Yeah. That was my experience down there. Not fun, but learning experience, certainly.
You think people who are listening for the first time to the show are like, I thought this was about vets talking about Ukraine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm entitled about Ukraine. So speaking of vets who are into fitness, at least theoretically, talking about Ukraine. That's a natural segue from,
at least theoretically. Yeah. I figured, like there's sometimes you look at the periods in your life where things are not so great. And you kind of look at, like, to me, that part of life is the green room at the Comedy Store. Like the shit that Joe Rogan says about that place having its own energy is true. And for me, it kind of represents a phase of life. You know what I mean? When I was doing a lot of stand up, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And now let's talk about how things are so much brighter, and we should go to Ukraine and kill Russians, right?
Duh.
Now, things are on a personal level, things are better, but
that's cool.
The world is crazy right now. So we should probably transition to that. And you can just edit out that shit if you want. It's a dumb story.
I'll probably keep it in. You never know.
Oh, all right. All
right. Speaking of casinos in Alabama, callback. Every time my coworker Matt sees me now, he's like, he comes in once. He's another Cal grad Marine. He'll come to work on Fridays. He's working Fridays for us right now, and he comes in. He's like, every time I see you, you look more redneck, because I eventually have incorporated camo beard, camo seat covers in my truck.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was like, you're actually right. And what you didn't see was I got another tooth extracted last week, so I'm missing 2 teeth in my mouth apparently.
That's fucking. Does the camo in the truck, does it hide you from?
If I go like this and put my hood on, which is camo, and go like this,
and then sit back, and
yeah,
then no one can see anything except your red beard.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess you got to have like the accoutrement of the hobby, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those dudes who are driving like a Toyota Corolla or something, but they have like 5 antennas like a cop car because they do like ham radio shit.
Yeah.
Like, no, man, it's very important what I'm doing out there.
Let me guess, you don't trust the government.
I got a computer mining Bitcoin in this car.
Exactly. I got a direct connection to InfoWars right now.
You want to know what the cops are saying right now, man? I got all their shit, all the frequencies.
They're about to take off right now and drop some more chemtrails.
And then he gets out of the car and he has like antenna, like the old Martians, because he screwed him into his head. The tinfoil hat's there, but he doesn't understand that, you know, the antenna is reaching through
his Faraday cage.
Exactly, through his Faraday cage.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay.
So yes, that was the teaser trailer to the rest of our season.
Faraday cages and chemtrails.
That's our other podcast. Join us live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Central.